All right. Well, I was gonna wait till later in the evening, later in the day, to talk about this fight between Andre Dirrell and Jose Uzcategui that took place last night. So I got a good night's sleep. I was able to watch the fight again this morning and take a look at that controversial ending. And I've come up with my own opinion about what I think happened at the end of the fight and what I think should have happened at the end of the fight. And first off, I'm going to start with, I'm never going to ever question, a fighter's heart, uh, fighter's courage, ever call a fighter a quitter in the ring, because it does take a great deal of courage to get up in that ring and fight and put your life on the line, uh, night in and night out. So I give these guys a lot of credit. But again, I think that fighters do make decisions. I think they're faced with a choice in certain circumstances in a fight, and some fighters, react differently than other fighters would. And I think you saw that last night with Andre Dirrell. So after watching this fight again, um, I watched the ending, and you know, I thought that Uzcategui was in the process of throwing a combination right before the bell rang, and he finished the combination just barely after the bell rang. So it was just barely a millisecond after the bell rang. So it wasn't a clear, intentional punch after the bell. I just think he was, in the process of throwing a combination, and he finished the combination just a millisecond after the bell rang. So this was not a flagrant type foul. This was not an egregious type foul, in my opinion. So I don't think this was intentional at all, and I don't agree with the referee's decision at the end of this fight. Number one, and number two, if you look when Andre Dirrell went down face first, and then he got up on his knees, and the referee asked him, Bill Clancy asked him, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" He nodded yes twice. Go back and watch that. He nodded yes twice. Then he looked over outside the ring to his corner, and it seemed like he was having some type of dialogue with his corner, his trainers and his handlers outside the ring. And that's when he went back down face first. Okay. And then after that, the commission officials came over. They told him to roll over and lie on his back, but not after. This was after he talked to his corner. He was looking over and having some type of dialogue and conversation. Then he went back down face first. So why did he answer to the referee, Bill Clancy? He nodded like, "Yes, I'm okay." And he was talking, and seemed to be very aware of the situation at that particular time. So then when he was on his back, the referee, Bill Clancy, went over to him and didn't even say, "Hey, we're going to give you 5 minutes to recover and see if you can continue." Immediately, the referee said, "Oh, I'm going to disqualify Uzcategui." When does that ever happen? Usually, after a low blow or some type of foul or unintentional foul or whatever the case may be, the referee will say, "Okay, you get 5 minutes to continue. We're going to give you 5 minutes to try to recover." So this was not the case last night. This was just an immediate, on the spot decision, and it looked like Bill Clancy was upset. He was like emotionally charged at the end of this fight. He had a kind of a scowl on his face. He was upset, but Uzcategui, obviously, he did warn him earlier in the fight, but as Paulie Malignaggi did mention, there was a language barrier here, so we have to take that into account as well. But not only that, Paulie Malignaggi made a great point, and he also was critical of Bill Clancy going over and saying, right away, "Hey, we're gonna disqualify him," without initially telling him, "Hey, we're gonna give you 5 minutes to continue." So I just think that Bill Clancy made an on the spot decision, and I know it's hard being a referee, and sometimes you do things like that when you're caught in the heat of the moment. If you have time to think about something, a lot of times you may do it differently, when you go back and think about it. But he made an on the spot decision, and I think after hearing that, Dirrell just laid there and said, you know what? Why am I going to continue if I can win by disqualification? Now, does that mean, Dirrell's a coward? Am I going to call him a quitter or anything like that? No, again, I think he was an opportunist and he made the most of the situation. So it's like anything else. If you're working a job and you can work 4 hours and get paid the same as if you work 8 hours, of course you're going to choose 4 hours. So if you're a salaried employee, you don't get paid by the hour, you're going to want to finish that job as quickly as possible. So he was given an opportunity where he could not have to fight the rest of the fight and get the victory. So he took that. Was that the best thing to do in that situation? I know I have my opinion on that, because now you open the door to controversy, and then you open the door to people questioning your character. And I'm not going to go as far as doing that, but I do think that it was kind of suspect the way that whole series of events played out at the end of that fight. I honestly suspect that he could have continued, and I'll tell you why. Because when you get hit on the point of the chin or in that jaw area, that basically short circuits you. It's not like getting hit in the body or getting hit in the temple where there's a delayed reaction and then you may go down later, and then there's like a residual effect from a body shot. You see a guy get hit in the body, there's a delayed reaction, then he goes down and then he starts withering in pain because there's like as I said, it's a pain that carries on for a couple seconds. When you get it in the point of the chin, you go down, you're short circuited, you're out, your eyes are glossy, you can't even talk. We saw it early, we saw it later in the night. In the fight with Beltran, landed that left hook and boom, his opponent was short-circuited, his head smashed on the canvas. He couldn't really, he wasn't cognizant, he was out. Whereas Dirrell went down face first, got up on his knees, and he started talking. He nodded his head yes, that he was okay. And then after, as I said, communicating with his corner, then he went back face first, and then he was rolled over, and the referee immediately told him, hey, we're going to disqualify him. So of course he's not going to even try to recover. He's not going to sit there and say, I want to fight. So what would a lot of people do in that situation? That's questionable. Who knows? But I don't believe he wanted to win that way. But he made the most of the opportunity. Now he's got an interim IBF super middleweight title, and his career goes on. So I don't think that it was intentional by Uzcategui. I don't think that it was the right decision made at the end of this fight. If anything, I thought it was totally incidental. I thought it was accidental. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think it was a malicious act by Uzcategui. I don't think he intentionally tried to cheat. I don't think he intentionally tried to foul Andre Dirrell. As I said, he was in the process of throwing that combination, and unfortunately, the third punch in that combination just landed barely after the bell, and he couldn't stop it, midstream. He just couldn't say to himself, like, I'm going to stop this punch right at this particular time. And again, Bill Clancy should have been there. He saw that the two guys were close. He saw that there was, exchange. There was an exchange going on near the end of the round. He should have been in there, and he should have gotten between them, so that wouldn't have happened. So we see a lot of referees get caught in that situation when they're out of position. And if you look at a guy like Steve Smogel, who's one of the best referees in boxing, he's a little guy, and if you notice, he's always there at the end of the round near the fighters. So a situation like that can't happen, and I've never ever seen it happen in a fight where Steve Smogel was refereeing. Now again, he's an excellent referee. I'm not going to sit there and say Bill Clancy is a bad referee, but I thought he was off last night, particularly at the end of the fight in that 8th round. So that's my opinion. And let me talk about what Leon Lawson did, Andre Dirrell's uncle/trainer. That was disgusting last night. That was one of the most despicable acts I've ever seen in boxing. Going over to the corner and talking to Uzcategui's, kind of motioning that he was going to congratulate or just go over and be cordial to the Uzcategui corner. Went over there with his hands down and just was a vicious, vicious sucker punch. It was disgusting. And I quite honestly think that he should never be allowed in a boxing corner again. I think he should be barred for life. I think that was just words can't describe how disgusted I was watching that. That was just it was a horrible, horrible, horrible act. And Uzcategui had his hands down. He was relaxed. He just finished the fight. Um, and to get hit point blank like that without warning, without being able to, expect something like that, he could have really suffered some damage. He could have ended Uzcategui's career. If he hit him in the eye, maybe thumbed him in the eye by accident, something could have happened, and it could have ended Uzcategui's career. So I think that Leon Lawson Jr. should never be allowed, in a outside a boxing ring during a major event, or any event for that matter, any professional fight. I don't think he should ever be allowed in a fighter's corner again. I think he should be suspended for life. I was just appalled at what I watched last night at the end of that fight. I thought it was disgusting. I thought it was horrible. And yeah, that's just my thoughts, man. I thought that this was a raw deal for Uzcategui. I think he should appeal the decision by the referee, and I think he is in the process of doing that. If anything, they should have went to the scorecards, because this was not an intentional foul. It was not an intentional foul. This was totally by accident. And yeah, it is what it is, man. I thought this was shady, and I don't agree with it. All right, guys. Till next time, make sure you watch the show tonight, because we're going to definitely talk about this later. Talk about Terrence Crawford's great performance as well against Felix Diaz, Gervonta Davis as well. We're going to talk about that. So I'm not going to really talk too much about those fights, because I want to save it for later in the show. Ringside Reporter podcast. Come back to the channel tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Myself, Eric, and Ringside Robert will be here. We'll be ready to talk about this great weekend of fights, busy weekend of fights. And until next time, Beaver's out. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.